everyone. Welcome to the show. My guest today is Alex Cargill. So Alex and I got connected through the men's group that I'm a part of on Monday nights. Met a lot of exceptional men in that group. In fact, I've had a number of them on this podcast already. And Alex, when I first met him, it's almost a year ago now, just had a certain presence to him in the way that he communicated. He's a big dude with a big beard, and he's in construction and he makes beautiful furniture. He's a very creative person. But I heard him talk, and he was speaking about like integrating his shadow and spiritual awakening and how we need to actually do these things if we want to become our greatest selves. And I was just drawn to him in the way that his presence was and how he communicated. So we had a couple of calls offline, like not recording for a podcast. And I just got to understand a little bit more about his background and what brought him to this place and how he's gone through his own highs and lows and ups and downs along the journey in his relationship with money, in his deep down desires of a world that he knows exists, but had struggled to actually wrap his hands around and say, like, yes, this world does exist and I am this person and I'm stepping into it. And we did a visualization exercise on the podcast here because I wanted to hear Alex say out loud, what does this future vision for yourself look like? Let's describe it in detail. What kind of a dad are you? What kind of a husband are you? What does your business look like? Who are you serving? Why are you serving them? What's your why behind this? Is it an abundant future? Is it one filled with scarcity? Like, let's talk through it. Let's see what the potential is for this in a perfect world, knowing that you still have to go through life, but at the same time, having the vision that drives you, that grounds you in your purpose is the stepping stone. It's a starting point. So that was really powerful. And, Alex, I think, is somebody you're going to really enjoy meeting. He has a lot of exceptional knowledge to share in this space, especially for men that maybe look at being a man as machoism, as real men don't cry, vulnerability is the enemy, that type of thing. Alex is the complete opposite of that, but in a very manly body with a manly voice. And I think anybody that may see themselves in him would actually really connect well with him. So that's why I wanted to introduce you to him. So let's go ahead and give it a listen. All right, Alex Cargill, what's going on, my friend? So good to see you again.
Great to see you, man. Stoked.
Yeah, I know. I've been looking forward to this since our last chat that we did with Danielle, actually present in that one. But I was able to even hear another deeper side to who you are and what makes up you and some of the things that you've experienced throughout your life that have brought you to here. And I want to definitely dig into that because, as you know, I think this podcast I created with the intention on digging into the truth and going like, well, what the hell does that even mean? Like it's different for me, different for you, different for everybody else that's listening. But it's just interesting because people want to, kind of share and consume and then challenge those beliefs. And that's really the intent on what I want to do in this interview here too, is I want people to get to know who you are. Cause you and I have obviously got to know each other, about 6 months, I think, almost a year maybe was when we first connected.
Something like that. Time's kind of been all over the place and blending around.
Isn't that the truth? Yeah, it's been such a crazy year, but I met so many incredible people through the mentorship Monday calls that we do that we're not on every single week, but you and I seem to catch each other at least once a month on there. And I've just enjoyed our chats, man. And, I'm looking forward to diving deep on this and really extracting what makes up Alex. What brought you to this point, man? And maybe let's start off really quickly with just a quick grounding and a quote. And then I want you to introduce yourself to everybody. You can give the Coles Notes version or we'll expand on it from there. But Brene Brown has a quote that says, one day you will tell your story of how you overcame what you went through and it will be somebody else's survival guide. So I like to always say that out loud because it allows people to just kind of step into that space of like, whatever's coming up for you, let's go there. Let's have that conversation, man, because somebody's going to listen to this and feel inspired and take a positive step in their life. So with that, why don't you do the quick introduction, and then I'll dig a little bit as you start explaining. So who are you, man? Like, where are you right now? Maybe explain to everybody, and then even go back to where you're from and how you grew up and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, sounds good, man. And first off, I love that quote because, Man, it resonates. There's so many men in my life that, their stories have really helped guide me into some new places and really sort of kicking off my journey. But my journey goes back sort of a long ways. It's been an up and down roller coaster. It's, I grew up, we really didn't have like a whole ton growing up. There was a whole bunch of sort of odds and sods and my dad was he was self-employed. And so, that was something that, sort of got ingrained in me. So as I grew up and I got out of school and everything, I started up a company doing construction when I was about 21 years old. And, that was really a roller coaster because, it was learning. It was being this young buck and taking on, sort of bigger and bigger jobs. I'm really good at what I do. However, it's, sort of the back end stuff can kind of be overwhelming and, it's sort of learning it. And it's also managing people's money and that sort of thing, right? Where, they're looking at this little kid, this 20-year-old baby-faced guy that, is going to take on these jobs. And it was great. And there was lots of stuff there. And so there's, I've been in construction pretty much my whole life. My dad was a designer. I could sort of grew up, reading drawings before I could read a book kind of thing. So it's been something so natural for me. And I really moved into furniture because I just love taking, the spirit and the natural beauty of the wood and creating it into sort of functional art is the way that I sort of describe it. But with that, there's been, tons of challenges that have been along the way. Being an entrepreneur, there's so many times where I felt just alone and by myself. It's not wanting to discuss or let the guys know that it's like, holy shit, I don't know where this next check's coming, how I'm going to meet these bills, where it's going to be. There's been times where I haven't been able to meet those bills. It's, and it's wearing these masks that, you got all your shit together. Yeah. But really you're just sort of lost and there's nobody to open up to. There's no place to go. And then it's like at the end of my 20s, I linked up with my parents and we started a family company and that just basically went sideways. And it was, a really sort of tough spot. It was kind of like the nightmare of how family businesses can go is the way that it went. And, I took a lot of that on myself and just really beat myself up about it and the failures of what went on there, like sort of the whole goal when going into that, it was this opportunity to like make a change for our family and, sort of save my parents from not having a ton of cash and that sort of thing. And that was sort of like my big thing is I was going to change our family story. Yep. But the blueprint I had laid out growing up, that's what I was stuck in. And, being in this place of being uncomfortable around money was the place that I was comfortable. And so it took a lot to really get out of that. And I still stumble over it here and there. It's been a journey. But so when that all sort of went down the tubes, that was, probably about 8 years ago now that happened. And I took on everything and sort of all the debts from the company and tried to keep it going and make it happen for myself and for my partner. And, now my one kid that I had, he was like, a year and a half old at that point. And it was just, I was so buried. I couldn't get myself out of it. And I was beating myself up. And, it was like looking at all of these different things that I thought I was supposed to be as a man and allowing myself to not, give myself any grace or, it was just excuses for why I couldn't do it. And I was looking at all these external factors and, it was this sort of stereotypical man's man of having the truck, the wife, the money, the car, everything, right? And living into that. And, it just went fucking sideways. And all I wanted to do was build furniture and build these beautiful things and really live into my passions and create a life. And I had all these dreams, but I had no idea on how to achieve it. And so with that, I started to get into sort of looking at different modalities of like, inner work and self-development and really got into the men's work. And that's where things really started to shift for me. And once I started diving into that, there was all of a sudden this huge story opening up, and I got to learn, like, okay, well, yeah, there was a blueprint that was laid out for me growing up. There's generational traumas that I'm dealing with. There's my own inner traumas. There's, you know, all these bits and pieces that are causing me to trip over myself all the time. So when I started realizing this stuff and I sort of started diving deeper, it started opening up more doors. You know, and when I was, you know, sort of in my early 20s and stuff like that, I was always, you know, figured that, you know, life was good. The universe has my back. I'm ready to rock and roll. It's just, you know, nothing can stop me. I'm one of those guys that thinks that, like, well, if that guy can do it, I can do it. So it's like, I got no problem trying something, right? And when I did that, it's like, that's awesome. But when all of a sudden all these things that I was tripping over and all of the stories that I was telling myself and like just beating myself up when I'd mess up and just, you know, I was my own worst critic, that's when shit would start falling apart again, right? And it was just like, just this nonstop verbal abuse. And
internally,
you know, one of the greatest things that my dad ever taught me was that mind over matter. And so that was a fantastic thing for me. And growing up when I was a kid, where that really first sort of came into play, if we were having, like, you know, if we were wrestling or whatever and that sort of stuff, and he'd be tickling me and I'd try and tickle him back, I couldn't get him to laugh. He could just shut off that whole trigger of, you know, the physical body to the mind. And so he taught me how to do that. And also he taught me about meditation. He taught me about, you know, sort of these things that we can go deep inside of our minds and stuff, right? And so while I was growing up, I'd sort of like play around with that. For some reason, when I was, you know, sort of around like 10, 12 years old, I've always been a bit of the class clown kind of thing. I've used humor to get out of sort of weird, sticky situations and that sort of stuff. Or if I felt like I was failing at something, I'd try and make everybody around me laugh so they wouldn't see what was going on. I'm quite a bit of the chameleon, you know, so to speak. And
the masks again.
You know, I was able to. Oh, the masks, man. The masks are huge, right? And they're just parts of ourselves, and we can go into that later. I'm big into IFS therapy and, you know, the parts of ourselves and get into our true self. And it's like the parts are all these different masks that are just hiding things. But sort of back to the mind over matter, I started doing these things where I'd learn to like not laugh, or I'd learn to stop myself from crying. I started, you know, doing these things where I would be able to shut off emotional things, where that ended up being a detriment to myself. It was great control of my mind-body experience. However, when I started getting into some of these things where I was deeper in trouble, I would emotionally disconnect. I would use things to numb myself so that I wouldn't actually be feeling any of those problems or any of the pain that was in there. So there's a lot of stuff that got like built up inside me, and the energy got stuck within my body, and it, you know, it stopped me from being able to actually work through and move forward. So, you know, sort of speeding up back to getting into men's work, I really started diving into my shadow and bringing a light to the darkness. And when I started doing that, it was tough, man. It was really tough, but it brought up a lot, and it's helped me like step through. And it's like, if we don't bring, you know, those old emotions, that old energy that's bottled up inside our bodies, we don't bring that forward and we don't actually integrate that into our lives now, you're never going to get past it, right? And this is one of the things with IFS and like sort of parts theory, when, you know, we're just continuously letting that part control us, then you don't actually accept that that part is trying to do a job to protect you, then you all of a sudden, like, you allow that to happen, you speak to that part, you move that energy through your body, you get that out, and you're able to give it a new job that's actually helping you and combining and integrating into that true self of who you want to be. So, you know, a lot of people, they don't want to do the shadow work because it's just too hard. But it's like, if you don't do that shadow work, if you don't bring light to that, if you don't integrate that into the system and the vision that you want to be working into as a human, then you're going to be lost forever. So, yeah, it's the men's work is being absolutely integral. And I mean, you know that. It's like the Monday night calls. I can't stand it when I'm in it, right?
Yeah, I've often described it as you don't even know you need it until you miss it one week, right? And then something feels like it's missing. And There was a few things that you said that I want to pick up on, and then a couple other little golden nuggets there that I want us to go down as well. But one of them is just how you were brought up and the fact that you had an entrepreneurial family. I actually didn't have an entrepreneurial family, but we did have a very non-healthy relationship with money, I want to say. And it's actually been really challenging for me to even say that out loud, because I don't want to be hurtful to my parents in the sense of like, you know, you guys screwed us up. No, they didn't screw us up. They did the best that they could in the moments based on their life choices and decisions as well. But I still remember growing up, and I don't know if you can relate to this, but, you know, we'd get a new boat because the family wanted a new boat at the lake, and it was always debt financing. It was never paid with cash. And I still remember my dad saying, you know, well, that's the Turnbull way. You know, you just, you know, you get your stuff through debt financing. The bank helps you pay for it. And that stuck with me for a long time. And I always thought, like, is that how it is? Is that how it always is? Am I always going to be owing taxes to the government? Am I always going to have debts and be behind on payments and wondering where the next check's coming from and stuff? And dude, I didn't honestly break through that until 4 years ago myself even too. And that was just the starting point of breaking through on it, of like trying to get my head right around that. But
I'm still breaking through that.
Of course. Yeah. But I had to look into the past in order to see the why behind my attachment to that and the stories I was telling myself. And I wanted to ask you though, why do you think men have such a tough time asking for help? Because you've alluded to it a couple of times in your own journey of, you know, you kind of distract with some humor, and we've even seen it too. Like when people come into the mentorship Monday calls that you and I participate in, they're ready to kind of open up. But I've mentioned it to many, many people in my life that have kind of just cracked open a little bit of like, that sounds pretty cool, but then they don't show up. Why do you think that is? What's been your experience with that?
Man, I think there's a ton of different reasons, but I think one of the biggest things is the vulnerability for men has been squashed. You know, it's like, you want to be a man, everything that you see on TV, everything that you see on Instagram, everything that you see sort of like on just the way a man is supposed to be living life. There's been this whole thing behind marketing of just really pushing having all these things, you know, it's getting into debt, it's getting into this, it's, you know, deal with it later, deal with it later, deal with it later. So, you know, it's men have been taught not to express their feelings, not to express their emotions. It's like, you know, the masculine is this strong, tough, solid state of just, you have a solid foundation where nothing can stop you. And men are supposed to be unstoppable. We're not supposed to have problems, right? We're supposed to be the problem solvers. And, you know, it's like, then you have the feminine, which is supposed to take care of the household and, you know, take care of your emotional states, take care of these bits and pieces and look after the man from that side. And they're supposed to pick up on this. And it's sort of like, that's kind of where marketing has gone. I mean, you just look at the old thing. It's like, what is that? Like, boy, I can't even remember, but it, you know, like girls are sugar and spice and everything nice. And boys are puppy dogs, tails, snails, and whatever that old quote is, right? And it's just like, you know, we're just supposed to be grimy, dirty, whatever, the hunter and everything. And there's parts to that. Our biology is made up. As men, it's like, we're supposed to be hunters and gatherers and take care of things. And that's freaking fantastic. And we can do that. And from a primal sense, that's definitely it. But what we've lost is this whole connection to our own personal feminine, where we're actually able to, you know, sort through our emotions, where we're able to sit with our feelings. And this is one of the biggest things about the shadow work, is being able to integrate all of those things in together, right?
Yep.
And so it goes back to having those masks and men just trying to live up to this social standard of who we're supposed to be, when that's just bullshit. We're all completely different people. We're so, you know, men have so many different skill sets. It's like, you know, I'm fantastic with my hands. I can build some of the most beautiful furniture. I can figure out geometry. I see when somebody's talking to me about what they want to have built, I see it in my head as they're speaking, and I know exactly how I'm doing. I can build something without any set of plans or anything like that. But, you know, go to an IT guy man, I can't figure out a computer for the life of me, right? It's like, yeah, I can hit record, I can hit play, I can do that, you know, or it's like finances. I was never taught properly how to do finances and stuff, right? And it's like, there are different men and there are different roles and there's different things, and society has completely changed. The roles of everybody has changed. It's not about caveman just, you know, going out hunting and gathering and bringing it back and you know, the woman taking care of the kids and that sort of thing, right? There's different roles for everybody, and it's opened up this world where, you know, it's men haven't gotten to a place or being allowed to get to that place of vulnerability and open up about it. You know, it's been shut down. There's lots of little bits and pieces where, yeah, they haven't been allowed to do it.
Yeah, I know we've talked about this before too, especially in the construction or more, you know, working with your hands, kind of blue collar roles as well. There's a culture almost within that, right, of masculinity that says, like, you know, you don't cry. But real men don't cry.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
You're a pussy,
exactly.
Right?
And it's like, literally that language that too, right? Like there's like comedy skits online about this stuff, and it's quite funny actually. But at the same time, it's also quite sad, considering.
Oh, it really is. I mean, like, here's one of the things, and I remember talking about this a while ago with one of my coaches, Jackie McDonald, a few years back. She was doing some EFT tapping with me, and just phenomenal woman. But with one of the things I was chatting about was that culture. And, you know, it was like me opening up, and it was talking about, you know, emotional intelligence, which, you know, or emotional resiliency, and, you know, opening up to men about this. This was the first time I started talking about I wanted to start coaching men. And the thing that sort of came up about that for me, which was a huge apprehension, was like, the guys that I'm around don't want to hear this shit. Like, we're on the construction site and we're taking the piss out of each other. Yeah. And it's like, for me, I'm great at taking the piss out of people. Yeah. It's fun. It's good. But it's great if it's in a constructive sort of like good manner. But the problem is it gets taken to a new level. And so many times that becomes the story. And when that's the only thing that's ever being discussed and there's no deeper discussions past that point, then the guys get lost inside the joke, right? And the joke becomes the reality. And, you know, that's the problem with our subconscious. When we continuously tell it something, that becomes the reality. So, you know, if we don't have spaces like Mentorship Mondays, or I'm also a leader of part of Man Talks Alliance with Connor Beaton, you know, there's Sacred Sons, there's endless things out there for men to be able to join and have these containers to be able to talk about it. But there's that whole problem of, like, you can only give them the invite, right? And it's like, unless they actually step through that door, it's a really difficult space to actually just step through that door. So it's, you know, men like you and I and all the other guys that are diving deeper into this thing is sharing about this and talking about it and actually putting this out into the world that, hey, it's okay to be hurt. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to express yourself. It's okay to let those fucking tears roll. Yeah. You know, that's being a man. Yeah. Having that emotional intelligence to be able to take care of your emotions inside is how you are stronger for the outside world. Yeah.
And to ask for help is the other thing that comes to mind too, right? Like I think I mentioned to you that about a month and a half ago, I put out a podcast episode that was another piece of me stepping into speaking more of my truth and even leaning into the thought of, well, if I do this, am I going to come across as angry and people are going to hate me for it? Or they're going to see me as this 14-year-old version of myself that just used to fight all the time? And I didn't get a whole lot of feedback on the public posting of that content, like social media type thing. But I had some people reach out to me privately though. And it really surprised me. Like, my cousin's husband was one of them. And, you know, he's a guy's guy as well, right? He's a hunter. He likes his beers. In fact, him and his buddies get together every Monday and they brew beer, right? And they have an aspiration to try and turn it into a company. And he listened to the podcast and just reached out and said, thank you for saying this out loud. I thought that I was going crazy with my own thoughts, where I was saying things out loud where he was going, yes, but then there was a fear though for him to actually say it out loud. And I guess I'm just coming back to the idea that that's just another piece of the puzzle, I think, to crack that nut open and give permission for other men to step into that too and know that, Yeah, there's a culture, I'd call it locker room talk or construction site talk or whatever. That's a thing. I've been a part of it too, man. Like I played hockey for 25 years of my life. I know that world.
Right. You know it
Yeah,
well.
I know it well. And quite frankly, it was kind of fun in the time. And then I look back though and think like, yeah, that probably was not how I wanted to show up in this world. I want deeper conversations, you know? And and then I had to go and seek out those places. Like, where do you even find people like that are open to have a conversation and to not label vulnerability as weakness? That's the biggest thing, right? It's more just of like transparency and vulnerability in the context of like being your honest, truthful self. Because what else are we if not that? You and I talked about that Jordan Peterson and Joe Rogan interview where they were literally saying that, right? Like the whole idea of, you know, you have to speak your truth. It will get you to where you want to go. And ultimately, how the hell do you know where you want to go? All you got to do is just show up.
Well, that's it. Well, and if you don't ever speak your truth, if you don't ever put it down on paper, if you don't, you know, journal and actually think about it, if you always mask it, you always, you know, cover it up, you always bury it down, then you're never going to know where you want to go, what the direction is, what the steps need to be. So yeah, it's, you know, it's like, it's just, yeah, like I was saying, get out there and share it. And like, I commend you so much and like opening up your voice and like your sort of journey that you've been on, especially over the past while, and number of months of like really coming into your truth and letting the world know, like, man, that's the first step with your cousin's husband. You know, yeah, he may not want to express it out to the world right now because he's probably got a bunch of buddies that, you know, are going to take the piss on Monday night or whatever.
What are you talking about, you weirdo?
Yeah. There, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like, you know, but like what a great step that he actually was able to open up to you and send you that message. Like, it's those baby steps. Like my experience with it, I was so completely lost when I was like falling apart, and it was like I thought my, you know, marriage was going to be done. I'd be losing access to my kids, where I was, you know, on the brink of bankruptcy, when things were just like in really dire straits, and I had nobody to talk to about it and like where to go with it. It was a really sad experience to be living through. You know, it was completely lost. And so when I started taking those little baby steps and started hearing these different things, and then I started like looking around, like, who can I actually open up to about this? Man, there was a lot of my buddies who basically like went off the call list.
Yeah.
Right? Like there were very few. And I grew up in a place in North Van where it was sort of small town living in the big city. We've got a huge crew of friends that we grew up with, and like some amazing people inside there. But, you know, a lot of people don't want to dive deeper into those conversations, you know, as it's big into the sports. It's like, that's as far as it goes, you know, it's how you doing? Well, it's, you know, it's not like, fuck, man, I'm, you know, about to go bankrupt. I'm about to lose my wife. I'm about to lose the kids.
Yeah.
I don't know where to go with it. You seem to have your shit together. Like, what are you doing? But it's like, no, like that would have been like, whoa, man, like, I gotta, you know, like step away from that. And then I had people step away from me, you know, and so, hey, that's fine. What it allowed is it opened up space. Like, and this is one of the biggest things for me is having gratitude for all of the, like, the shitty times that came through, all of the stuff. Those were huge learning lessons. Like, I alluded to the, you know, back in my early 20s, had the universe having my back. And then, like, you know, when I was going through all of my stuff, I was like, man, the universe is really
shitting on
like,
me right
trying
now.
to just kick me down. And I'm just like, I'm not supposed to be part of this world. I don't know. Like, there were some pretty deep, dark thoughts that were going through my head at that time. But one of the biggest things that I got into was Joe Dispenza and changing the energy and changing the vibration of the way that I was looking at things, and you know, creating that vision of who I wanted to be, and changing that whole thought process and living into that with inside my meditations, going into the quantum realms, and actually, like, you know, making sure that you're putting all of that energy into who you want to be, and then that becoming a reality for you. And that made a huge difference. And so once I started able to actually do that, that sort of opened up the doorways to new people coming in.
Yeah.
And then sort of the universe, like, I could see that what was actually being thrown up in front of me were the big, huge mirrors saying, hey, bud, you need to work on this. This is where, you've got the work to do, and you're gonna keep hitting these walls. You're gonna keep doing it. And man, I hit the same freaking walls. I don't know how many times. It was like they were thicker and thicker every single time. The mirror was bigger and bigger, right? And that brought in, like, once I started really having gratitude for those mirrors showing up in my life, that's when different people started showing up in my life. I started, looking at different ways to do things. Like when I finally made the decision that I could not keep going with the business that I had at the time, like I was a failure at that. Like there was just too much to get out of. I started looking around and obviously I can't do this for myself, and I don't know what I'm going to be doing. And I was very critical of myself, but it was like, okay, I just need to find a job, and it was like, I was looking all over the place, putting in some applications, looking at Craigslist ads, whatever. And I saw this ad come up for IATSE. I was in like a crazy boom back in 2016, and they were looking for scenic carpenters. And back when I was like 19, 20, I'd put in an application to be a carpenter in the film industry, and I heard nothing. And it was probably a good thing, because back then I was cocky, and it was a much different way of getting into the union as it was when I was there, in 2016. And so I got in, I put in my application. I called a couple of friends who were in the industry. One of them made a phone call that night when she got home to a construction coordinator that she had worked with in the past. 7 a.m. the next morning, I get a phone call, and it's this coordinator. And he is like, when can you get in? And I was like, well, man, I don't know, like, I got a few jobs on the go. He's like, man, we need people, like, right now, like, this is an opportunity to jump in, get on it. And I was like, I can be there tomorrow, but I just got to let you know I've got a couple of contracts. I'm going to have to, like, bounce a little bit in and out. And so on 2 days later, this was on a Monday afternoon, I put in the application. On Wednesday morning, 7 a.m., I'm driving up to this studio, massive studio in South Vancouver, and walk into this place. And it's literally like, it was Lemony Snicket's A Series of Unfortunate Events. So it's like the sets on this thing were absolutely massive. At the time, it was the biggest production that Netflix had ever done. So it was like, hundreds of millions of dollars going into the series. And so it's like you walk in and the studio is massive. It's one of the bigger ones in Vancouver. And there's these leaning towers and all this crazy stuff going on. It was just like, oh my God, this is so freaking cool. And so when I first got in there, they gave me a couple of just regular old mundane jobs to just go and rip some plywood. And after a few days, they started realizing, okay, well, this guy knows what he's doing. So after a week, I had about 10 guys working underneath me, and I'm brand new permit. It's like I've got nothing that is any seniority, nothing inside there. But so I'm running this crew of guys, and I'm getting things done, and things are happening. And then they heard that I built furniture, and the guy that was building furniture for Set Deck was having a family problem. He had to take off and whatever. So they asked if I wanted to give it a try. I was like, yeah, man, that sounds awesome. So then it was all of a sudden like, okay, here you go. Here's a corner of the millwork shop. You're going to just build the furniture for this. And it was like, I met the set decorator. She came down and we went for a walkthrough, and there was a couple of things that this guy wasn't able to figure out for a couple of weeks. And I walked in there, and because of my skill set, it was just like, yeah, we'll do this, we'll do that, and that'll work out. And then we can just figure out this for that. And, it was just like, boom, boom, boom. I just had these problems solved right there. And she was just like, oh my God, you're a godsend. What is this? And then for the next 8 months, all I did was build the most crazy, ridiculous furniture for one of the biggest productions happening. And then after that, I got the opportunity to actually buy a whole millwork package and bring that in and rent it out. And so it was like, all of a sudden, it was just like, holy cow, like, maybe there is something to all of this. Maybe there is something to the universe having my back. Maybe, like, for me to shut down that business, and I held on to it for years, that I was trying to, like, make ends meet. Yeah. And it was just killing me. But I wasn't into my truth there of what I wanted to be doing, where I wanted to be going. I was still trying to live into that man's man thing, and I didn't want anybody to look at me as being a failure. And so I held on to it and failed left, right, and center. And it was like, I was living a complete lie of who I was. And then all of a sudden, when I decided to give that up and try something new, I was literally handed what I'd been dreaming about doing for so long, which was just build really cool furniture. And so then I was doing that for about 4 years or so, and it was really great, and I was having so much fun doing it. But the only thing about working in film is when you're on a film or a show, they sort of own you. You're sort of 6-7 days a week for 4 to 8 months straight kind of thing. And it's like, for me, I have another thing. I got 2 boys. They're wonderful. They're great. I've got a partner. I don't want to just leave her alone. I'd like to be with them. I want to be with my boys. I want to see them grow up. You know, I'd be at home, and, you know, I'd probably get home for bedtime, but I'd be gone before they wake up. So I'm seeing my kids, like, you know, 20 minutes, half an hour a day kind of thing. Couple of hours if I'm lucky, because I didn't have to work late. You know, so it was one of these things where I wanted to keep going with it in some which way or another, but I ended up working on a show with now my shop partner. I ran his shop for him, and he had a warehouse space. And so we talked, and I moved into that with him, and we're 50-50 inside that warehouse space. So now I've got that. So now I can service film from the outside, but I can create my own schedule, and I can do that sort of thing, which is really fantastic. And I get to do the things that I love. But, you know, it wasn't until I started really leaning into, like, hey, I got to create some visions here. If I want to, like, go someplace, I need to know where I'm going. So it's creating that vision. It's figuring out what that purpose is. It's creating, you know, the direction, and all of those things come and they go and they change, and they're ever manipulating and you know, switching up, right? But it's keeping your finger on the pulse of what is alive and real. Like Nick says every Monday night, what's alive and real for you? You got to do that every day. Right? And things change. And so it was figuring out that, like, I can do this stuff, but I also know that I've got a bigger purpose than just building furniture. Like, I love to build furniture. It's the hobby that I can turn into being an actual, you know, something that can create income for me. However, there's this whole thing about, like, man, you know, getting those men who are stuck, who don't know who to ask, who don't know where to take the next step. I want to help men with that, right? So, like, that is my biggest purpose. That is my passion. That's where I want to be rolling. And so that's what I'm moving into. And it's like, that just goes back to, like, you need to keep that finger on the pulse of what you want to be doing. So it's like the men's coaching wants to be my primary thing, where the furniture side of things is something that makes me super happy and I get to do on the side.
Yeah. It's interesting that we're speaking about this too, and I want to go a little deeper on this as well, but you and I chatted a few weeks ago, and then you came on a call with me and Danielle, and we just had a really great kind of high vibration conversation. And I mentioned to you that I've been formulating on a collective that I want to put together that would connect other people that are also just in that same kind of vibration. There's no other way to say it aside from just, it's a feeling, right? I actually wrote about it I just published it today, actually. I'll send it over to you, the podcast, but I talked about these conversations as, like, you can't even explain them. It's just a feeling. It's just something that you feel inside. And in that episode too, I actually talked about how I've reframed in the last 4 months this idea of, like, how do I accelerate all the things of being the highest, greatest version of myself and having a successful business and an amazing relationship and being a conscious parent and all of these things that make up life. And what's really hit me most in the last 4 months is removing the resistance. It's not even so much about the acceleration of, like, go do more in order to get more. It's more stepping back, slowing down, remove the resistance of the story that you're telling yourself as to why you can't do something or why your past has shown you that you're not ready for this or experienced enough or whatever it is, and just remove that. Remove the resistance, and that's when things just open up. And I'm really encouraged by the conversations that have been happening and knowing that, like, what we're doing here is a piece of that. This going out into the world.
Oh, it's a huge
piece. Somebody's going to hear this.
And you know what? That conversation that we had was actually a huge shift in what we had going on there. Or what I had going on. You know, it's like over the past number of months I've been working, and I mean, like, you filled out my survey, you know the things that I've been working on. We've been chatting about this for a while. But there was a thing that was holding me back, and there was a truth to what I was trying to put out into the world and share. And it was something that Danielle said to me inside there, which was like, you're trying to sell something that you're not actually living.
Yeah.
And it's like, that is so true. Like, it is so true. And it shifted everything for me. And I've gone back in the program that I've been making is I've been shifting everything around. I've been re-looking at things, because the biggest truth of it is like, I wasn't talking about my spirit. I wasn't talking about my soul. I wasn't talking about the universal energies, the consciousness that's actually out there. I was trying to, like, appease this sort of generic branding of men's work, where for me, my truth was, like I said with Joe Dispenza, it was like, once I started changing the vibration of what I was, looking for and wanting to live into, and I started living into that vibration of my higher self, that's when things started changing. That's when, like, okay, the floodgates started opening up. When, I talk about the universe having my back, like, it's all about the energies, everything. And it was like, for me, I was trying to hold that back from sharing that to the world, but, like, that's the truth of, like, really the basis. Like, there's all these, like, psychological and scientific things that I've been working on through my men's work. But it's like, if I hadn't had this energetic being and this, like, tapping into universal consciousness and really diving deep through the different modalities like breath work and meditation, that would all not have happened. And there's so much of that like, that conversation really opened up. So what you're doing with, like, having those conversations with people is absolutely huge. And it's fantastic. I can't thank you enough for inviting me on.
Yeah, of course. Well, we collectively, me and Danielle too, get just as much out of those conversations as the other people that come to them as well, because you see these unlocks happen, and it's uplifting. Like, it can't help but elevate you and your own beliefs, or my own beliefs, as to, like, what's possible when you just change the story. Just change the story. And I was looking back actually at some of your Instagram posts and Facebook stuff even too. And I remembered that one you put out, it was "The start is what stops most people." And that was back in October. You posted that one. And then you put and then you put the video out.
What is it now? It's March.
Yeah. But what I was going to say about that is then you put a video out after that too, because you put together this very detailed survey, and I gave you feedback on it where it was like, dude, this is deep. Like this, I haven't filled out a survey like this in a long time. And it actually was very enlightening for me even to go through the process of filling it out, just as a first step of, like, well, yeah, what am I thinking about that specific thing? Like, is my marriage where I want it to be? Do I feel like I'm the best dad that I possibly can be? Am I in the best shape that I can be, so that I can actually be the example to my kids of what it means to be healthy? It got me thinking about a lot of stuff. But I want you to talk through even now too, where do you feel like you are right now in that space of knowing that you had this bit of an unlock a few weeks ago, in knowing that, you had a structure of a program that was maybe based on preconditioning of what you've experienced in other programs and what you think people might want. And then you started realizing that, like, actually there is some, like, dark work, or the shadow work, and vibration and energy and quantum physics and all of these things that you can bring into it. Where are you at with that right now in your head?
Well, where I'm at with that right now is I feel a heck of a lot more free. I feel a heck of a lot more open. I feel like all of a sudden there's just these downloads that are happening, that, like, my brain is working on a new level. Because I wasn't living into my truth before when I was trying to make the original program. I kept like, hey, well, what about this? And it was like, at one point I had, like, when I first sort of, like, laid everything out into that program, then I started, like, mix and matching and putting it all around. It was just like, okay, there's all these different things and, like, these different modalities that, like, I put into all these modules, and it was like, holy shit, this is an overwhelming.
It's a lot of stuff, right?
Like, that's a lot of stuff. And it's, when I really take a step back from it, there is a lot of stuff to work through. And there's a lot of stuff that is going to work for some people, and it's going to work for other people, and it's not going to work for other people, and it's going to work for the others, right? But now that I've unlocked this, okay, where is my truth on that? I feel so much open. Like, there's a weight off of my chest. It's sort of like I had, like, a rubber band ball around my heart. and it was just like tight, and it was just like something's not right, something's not here, and I wasn't allowing myself to take the next step. I wasn't allowing myself to put that back out there into the world because I knew that it wasn't my truth. Like deep down, I knew that wasn't exactly what I needed to be teaching people and what I wanted to be sharing with men and helping them to unlock their potential. And so now that I've got this, it's all of a sudden like, yeah, things have shifted. It's like I'm about to change the handle on Instagram. I'm about to switch up everything for that. I now know what to tell my design guy of what to create for a logo and a name and everything like that. And it's just like there's all these different things that just feel absolutely great. Mm-hmm. And it's like this has all been happening over the past few weeks. And it's just this freeing experience. It's like when we get to live into our truth and we push out those parts and we hear them, we listen to them, we allow it to speak. But if it's not what's real to us, then you don't need to move forward into that. I kept on trying to like live into those things that wasn't quite real to me. Like there was, yes, I've done each one of these things, but the biggest shifts for me, I wasn't sharing.
Yeah.
I wasn't putting into that. I wasn't using as a tool. And so now it's just like, okay, well, this is the real shit. This is what I get to do. This is what I'm going to do. I feel this huge drive. I was having a chat yesterday with Di about it, and it was just like letting him know where I was at and where I was going to be moving forward, and just like how good I felt about it and just everything. And, so where I'm at with it is living into my truth, and it's freeing.
It's amazing, man. I want to actually do something with you here right now because I had my neighbor, Mike Prince, in my studio here, actually. I'll call it that, / kitchen in the basement suite. But I talked to him because he's in a bit of a transition right now himself where he's exiting a corporate role that he's been in for like 15 years. But he's really leaned into breath work and meditation and just, self-discovery work, and he actually got hit with Lyme disease. Like he believes now that he actually manifested that pain in his life because he was looking for a challenge. And what he said out loud was, he told his wife, I think I'm going to bike to Alaska. I was like, yeah, that's exactly what guys do, right? Guys do that. They're just, I need a challenge. I'm going to bike to Alaska. And he's like, that doesn't make any sense. I got 2 kids. And little did he know that life was about to slap him upside the face and say, you want a challenge? Here's Lyme disease. Deal with that. Lose all of all the muscle mass that you had gained, lose all your energy. But we did this visioning exercise, man. I'd love for you to speak out loud about this too. Why does this work matter to you? What does the next 5 years look like?
It matters to me because I know where I was. I know what a dark place I was in. I knew that if I didn't start doing this work, I probably still wouldn't be on this planet. And I know that there are other men that are held up in that space right now. And they need a hand to reach up and grab. So that's why I'm diving into this.
And what does that look like? Like, let's look ahead in 5 years. Your kids, how old are your kids again? Like 4, 6, and...
My kids they're 6 and 8. They'll be 7 and 9 at the end of this month.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So they'll be pulling into the teenage years in 5 years from now. What does your life look like? Like, just talk through it. Are you still doing construction? Are you building beautiful pieces of artwork? Are you working with men? My wife just walked in.
Well, there's a couple of things that, it's whether I'll be able to travel or not. But one of the biggest things for me, I think when I look 5 years into the future, I have a solid community that I've created to pull in men from all walks of life to lean into themselves and create their visions, find their purpose, and live into their truth. I also see that as just an abundance mindset of nothing's able to stop me. I'm an unstoppable force where I bring nothing but great energy into my space and just eject that back out into the world. I see my sons as living into the best versions of themselves with heart and compassion for the world around them. That's a big thing that my wife and I are teaching them, is to be open to the world, have empathy, and to be true to themselves, find their place, find their voice, hold that. We do practices with them with EFT tapping, with breath work, with mindfulness. It's a big thing that we work on with them, and we're diving deeper into that to create like good routines for them. And if I'm building a piece of furniture, it's just a beautiful piece that I'm just putting out. If there's anything in, it's a high commission. You know, it's no longer taking on a little kitchen cabinet job or anything like that. It's you know, really living into my creativity into the world and releasing that out in every aspect of life, really.
And what does that relationship with your wife look like in 5 years too?
The relationship with my wife is holding each other to the highest standard without it being a competition or without it being detrimental to being able to speak to one another. One of the things that I think we've found in our relationship, which is one of the most difficult things, is from our stories and everything from, you know, just our past experiences, our traumas growing up, there's so many ways that we allow that to still walk into our lives now, but to be able to encompass all of that, to face our own personal issues and be there as a true partnership where we just lift each other up.
Love it, man. I'm going to read you something here because your wife wrote this post on Facebook back in November when you put out your video. And I'm sure you know what it is, but I'm going to remind you of it. So she said, calling forward all the men who are ready to do the work of elevating their consciousness and become the fullest expression of themselves. My partner and love, Alex Cargill, is here for it. He's been doing his own shadow work, breaking patterns and healing the wounds, and he's ready to give support to others on their own journey to wholeness. I'd love for you to check it out. Tag some of the men in your life who may be interested in filling out the survey. The link is in the post of the video. It's already happening, man. You already have that woman in your life that's there standing by your side saying, go, you got this inside of you.
I do. And man, absolutely. And I am one of the luckiest guys in the world. Like the fact that she stood by me through all of the shit that I've brought through brought our family through has been, I have so much gratitude for that woman. We've worked together and against each other in so many different ways, but when it really comes down to it, the way that we've challenged each other to lift ourselves up and move forward into this world and be, you know, live our true selves, it's amazing. And to see what she's accomplished is absolutely unbelievable. And the fact that she supports me in moving forward on this journey is, yeah, it means everything to me. It's a true partnership, right?
Yep.
Is what it boils down to.
Yeah, I really appreciated reading that because I had a moment to kind of ground myself in the similar kind of dynamic that I have with my wife, because we can get pretty heated sometimes in the way that we communicate with each other, you know, and life gets in the way and kids are jerks sometimes. They don't want to brush their damn teeth and go to bed and life gets stressful. And then you throw in all of the other outside factors that we have the ability to control internally, but externally we don't. It's like we can't control what's going on in politics and wars and, you know, is this misinformation or not? But we can control what's in here. And just the idea of always coming to the table with a commitment to work through it and know that you'll be better on the other side. Even the shitty stuff, like just loving the shit out of all of it. It's
right.
Yeah, I was married before. I don't know if I've mentioned that to you, but I was married before, and that was probably one of the biggest reasons why I was out of that marriage. Was I didn't get that same kind of bounce back. There was no emotion. There was no passion. And sometimes we can attach passion to like, why are you getting on my ass? I'm doing the best that I can. And then other times you're like, this person really gives a shit about me to say this. And maybe it doesn't always come out the right way, but just the fact that you can have the conversations and come back together, it's a beautiful thing, man. I just wanted to remind you of that.
I appreciate that. Yeah, man, it's we definitely get fiery at times. we get under each other. It happens. It goes on, right? But that's the thing. The fact that we're able to bounce back, that we're able to communicate it, that we're able to take a second, it's, it's amazing. It's
For
great.
sure. I got a handful of questions left for you here, buddy. And then we'll wrap her up. I call it the one thing lightning round. You don't have to answer with one word answers, but they all kind of, maybe you will. And that's the other thing is whatever comes up for you, just say it out loud. Don't overthink it. Don't question it. You want to talk for 4 minutes about it? Feel free to do that as well. Sound good? All right. So first question is, who is one person or mentor that has been the most influential in your life all time? So you can go right back to childhood.
You know what? It's probably actually been over the past few years. One of the biggest influences on my life has been Connor Beaton. And it's reason being is because I didn't know how to step into my shadow. Mm. And that man knows how to step into a shadow. And he knows how to lead other men through that. And without that work with him, I wouldn't be where I am today.
Perfect. I've never actually met Connor before. I know of him just through mutual friends and stuff, but never actually met him in person. In fact, phenomenal. I think was he a part of the Brotherhood back in the day when that group existed?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I can't remember. But there was another guy too, another guy that actually got Lyme disease as well, and who ended up breaking out from the Brotherhood and starting his own thing. And there's a common pattern here is that everybody that leads men's groups usually have pretty traumatic, broken lives. It's what qualifies them for the work, right?
Yeah, well, we walked through the deep, dark, freaking
that's it, man.
Bottoms of ourselves, and it's going through the trenches, man. It's tough times create strong men, right? You
turn your mess into your message. There's nothing more powerful. It really isn't.
No, absolutely.
All right, next question. Who is one person or mentor do you feel is the most influential in your life right now? So, at this time.
Right now, hands down, that would be Di Manuel. He's been my coach for a little while now. We've been connected for probably about 5, 6, 7 years, and that man has held a container for me like nobody's else, and he's shown me what being in integrity is. He's really been somebody who's brought a lot to my life, and he's still doing that every day for me.
Yeah, Di's pretty awesome, dude. It's fun to hop on those calls with him every Monday. He brings a lot of energy. Right? Brings a lot of energy.
There's not too many men out there with that type of energy.
There's no doubt about that.
Something to witness.
It's infectious. There's no doubt. Yeah. Calls are different when he's there. Awesome. All right. Yeah. What is one philanthropic cause that means the most to you, and why?
Philanthropic cause. There's a couple of things that I'd love to see get a lot more recognition, and one is bipolar. I've lost a couple of friends to that disease, and it's that's been a tough one. And there's a lot of work that can be done around that, I think. The other thing being basically anything that deals with helping people out with addictions. We've also lost a couple of friends, very good friends, to different type of drug addictions. And it's a fight that needs to be at the forefront.
Yeah. Both kind of tied back to mental health, right? Which is another grounding into why this work that you're leaning into matters so much as well. It's a byproduct of the healing for both of those things. Mm-hmm. That's what most entrepreneurs answer with, is something that like their work is connected to making a difference on. It's I didn't realize it. Danielle asked me that question like a year and a half ago on a podcast, and I kind of got stumped a little bit, and I thought, it's what I do every day. What I do every day, I feel, is my contribution to the world, because I'm choosing to show up and constantly challenge myself and then share that or coach other people through it. And not everybody thinks like that. Entrepreneurs do, though. They really do, man. Mm-hmm. All right. What is one thing that you're most grateful for right now?
I think having the strength to lean into myself and actually look and ask myself the tough questions, and take those lessons and step into it and use them to move forward.
Love it. What is one thing you're most curious about and looking to explore more about? So you want to try and figure it out.
Energy and universal consciousness, spirituality, how we connect to the universe, how we connect to the world, the earth, Gaia, to each other, to every living creature. It's really diving deep into how the universe works, I guess, as I could plainly
You and me
put it.
both, man. We're very aligned on that one.
Yeah, but
You'll see. I'll share the episode that I just published today because I literally threw something out into the world where I was like, I don't know if people are going to think I'm crazy when I put this out, but I quite frankly, don't give a shit anymore. Like, I'm down the deep.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Live it. Just live what you speak, man.
I'm down the deep end.
That's
great. I
great.
dove both feet off the cliff.
That's it.
For sure.
Oh, brother,
Yeah,
I love it.
Can't wait to get your feedback on it, actually. Looking forward to it. Last question for you. What is one thing that scares you right now that you know you need to meet with bravery?
I would say that is probably really taking control of my finances. Becoming just the way that I've looked at myself in my shadow and how I've taken that energy towards my mental state. I need to do that in my finances as well.
It's good, man. What we say out loud here. What we say out loud here on these podcasts become reflection pieces, right? Because you said it. It's out into the world. You get to either show up with integrity and face it and figure out how to look at it differently, or you won't, and you'll be out of integrity. So that's the beautiful part about speaking out loud. Your truth is it forces you to just go and dig into that dirty stuff, man, and reframe your relationship with money even too. I spoke about that on the podcast too. This is where I say, I think you're going to like it, man. Because I talked about how 4 months ago, I dropped out of an executive role with my company and basically cut my revenue down by, 3/4, and naturally went into a state of like, oh shit, I better go replace that. And then went, whoa, wait a second. No, you shouldn't, because that is the old patterns of Trevor that would have easily just grabbed 3 or 4 or 5 more clients and been busy again and making the same amount of money, but in the exact same damn place. And then,
well, this is the exact thing that I'm working towards, right? And why I say my finances is because that's what I keep on doing. That's a story that I keep telling myself. Like, I just need to get this next little job and it'll just get me over that next hump and it'll just do whatever. But it's like, that's holding me back from going after my passion project, which is being in this space of, helping men and moving forward. Yep. And, so it's, and just having time for my family. I eat up so much of my time with the bullshit. Yeah. Well, I'm glad that we had a chance to talk through this, man, because I think I said this to you last time we chatted. I see a world in the future where you do create massive abundance for you, your family, everybody that you're serving with your gifts and all the imperfections of it as on your own journey, right? Because we're never ready for any of this stuff. We just dive in and figure it out. But I also see us just connected for a long, long time. We got kids that are very similar in age, and I know we're both exploring, like, how do you educate your kids in this crazy ass world where our kid's best friend could be a hologram, for God's sake? Like, who knows? You know what I mean? Well, this is it. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, like, there's so much stuff right now with the kids and just what's happening in the schools and just not having the same play dates, not having the same connection. They're having such a troubled time finding themselves and they're, where they fit in. Like, that's been one of the big things that's been coming up a lot for my oldest son is just how he sort of fits into this world at the moment. And, it's really tough. Like, and, one of the things that comes up for me when I start talking about this is the way that the world keeps saying, oh, kids are resilient, they bounce back, kids are resilient. Well, it's like, show me an adult that doesn't have childhood trauma. Right? Kids are resilient because they just have to. and quite literally they're putting on fucking masks right now and hiding behind
Literally.
them. And it's a terrifying space for little kids. It's absolutely crazy. I don't know if you're aware of this, but like the CDC just pushed back all of the developmental points for children.
Jeez, eh?
So it's like speech impediments are just absolutely going off the hook right now. And, they're where they end up getting into being able to read, being able to be verbal, being able to crawl is not even a space on there anymore. It's like walking is now later.
Yeah.
But there's this whole social aspect. It was funny, like last March, we had my son's 6th birthday, and his friend's dad came, and they had their 1-year-old baby. Their 1-year-old baby had never been in a social environment like that. It had never been around that many people before, because that was like the first time that things were slightly starting to open up a little bit again. And then it all went to shit.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it is so scary where kids right now aren't knowing where they fit in, and they're not developing those relationships, and they're not hitting these milestones. And it's a scary point. So it's like, yeah, we've talked about this, you and I, like, how do we want to be raising our kids? Where do we want to be, educating them? How do we want them to be learning this world? And so, man, I think that's one of the biggest things we need to be doing is looking out for our kids, and it's not happening.
We'll figure it out.
It's not happening.
Totally, man. We'll figure it out together. That's the future I see, and ultimately help be the example for our kids, knowing that they are source, they are enough, they have the ability to create happiness in their life regardless of whether there's outside circumstances that challenge that. And I'm looking forward to that future. I see it already. It's kind of like you with the furniture, man. You see the furniture and you're already piecing together this stuff. I see the retreats that we're going to do, and you're going to be there leading something too, man. You will. Breath work or some shadow work. Shadow work. I'll mark you down for shadow work. That's the thing I want you to lean into.
Go. Sounds good, buddy. I'll walk through that.
Love it, man. So how can people connect with you, understand what this next step is going to look like for you? Where can people follow your journey, man?
Well, yeah, so there's a few places that are going to be coming out. I'm just Alex Cargill on Facebook. Over on Instagram, I'm going to be switching things up, but it's going to be the Bear Wolf Integrative. And it's going to be a place where we connect, where men can actually come in, where you can start learning some skills on integrating all the different bits and pieces of yourself and external into your internal. And those are the main spaces at this moment.
Cool. I'll get all those links from you and put them up in the episode when it goes live here. The wolf, man, the bear wolf. I love that.
Oh, buddy, it's good, man. It's good. And this is one of the things. This is one of the downloads that I had just yesterday. It's like, man, for the past couple of months, I've been like trying to figure out what do I want to be calling myself. And my furniture side of things is Bear Wolf Studios. Bear Wolf, I'm a big believer in we all have spirit animals. We're all connected by energy, right? And my spirit animals growing up, as always, I was a big guy, very bear-like, hairy, big, whatever. And there's a thing about a wolf where it's like, I've also had this whole thing which was instilled in me growing up, is that I was a leader. And I really believe in that. And I've had a couple of connections with wolves in nature. There's wisdom that a wolf has. And this one time when I was tree planting, I was planting along and I all of a sudden looked up and there was a wolf. Well, there was this huge dog standing in front of me. I was like, whose dog is that? That's a gorgeous dog. And all of a sudden it's just like, that's not a dog. That's a freaking wolf. It was this beautiful, huge black wolf. And we stood there and just stared at each other for about 5 minutes. And then it went running off into the forest, and I went running back to where other people were. And, but it was just this, like, absolute connection. Like, we literally, like, I stared in this wolf's eyes for 5 minutes. But, yeah, the spirit animal and just our spirits in general, it's like, for me, when I had my 2 boys, it's funny. My oldest one is Wolf. He's the wolf. My youngest one is Huddy Bear. He's always been the bear. And so it's like, the 2 parts of myself, my 2 spirit animals, were split out into that. And it's just, so when all of a sudden yesterday, this thing came into me and that was it. Why am I trying to change it? Why am I trying to be anything different? It's a Bear Wolf initiative. It's our primal instincts. It's our, just getting everything back to our center. And so,
I love it, man. It's perfect. And I will obviously be on the journey with you here and supporting you any way that I can. And this is a piece of it, right? Is to just talk it out into the world. So
appreciate you, man.
Yeah, thanks so much for doing this, man. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Trevor Turnbull Show. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please consider subscribing on my YouTube channel and on your favorite podcast platform, and leave me a review. I'd love to hear from you. Now, until next time, remember, today is a beautiful day of opportunity. Trust that you're exactly where you're supposed to be right now. So be grateful, be curious, and be brave.